Next up is our esteemed executive director, Over Wells. She mentioned that at one time she recently was a county supervisor in Dane County, Wisconsin. I mean, that's Madison. That's Madison.
That's Madison,
and,
right?
A funny place in a state that's a little different overall, and successfully taking down a commuter rail project. We're multimodal here. This has been we have heavy rail, we have light rail going down, and now here's commuter rail is going to go down.
Okay.
You're on, Eileen.
Well, thanks very much. I don't have a PowerPoint in it, but I will try and just explain our experience. The slides that Panos put up could have been the same slides for Madison, Wisconsin. In the 2000 census, we had 485,000 people in the entire county of Dane. Madison had a little less than 250,000 people, but the commuter rail line proposal done by Parsons Brinkerhoff, with the same kinds of missing information, suggested a transit system that had commuter rail extending through the city of Madison from the city of Middleton, which adjoins the city of Madison on the west side, extending to the town of Burke, the east side of Madison. Now, if anybody's been to Madison, you know it's a beautiful city. And the city is located on an isthmus, which is about a mile-wide piece of land between two bodies of water, Lake Mendota to the north and Lake Monona to the south. And so the University of Wisconsin is situated on the south shore of Lake Mendota. It's beautiful, it looks over the University Hospital and the University campus. University Hospital is one of the largest employers in the city of Madison. But so this rail line, the supposition was that you'd have this rail line that went through the isthmus from east to west, and then there would be a trolley system that would circulate through that 1 mile wide isthmus. And then, of course, there would be a branch, an extension of this commuter rail system that would head northeast to our airport, and then yet another extension that would head south to some of the smaller cities and villages south of Madison. The price ticket was about $1 billion for the whole thing. And you have to remember, we are a county at that point in time of less than 500,000 people. It was that one slide you had, I was going to ask you to put it back up. I mean, it just says it all. Yet, with a straight face, the people that were proponents of this transit system said that we needed to build this thing. We needed to be like Portland. And this was back in 2005, 6, when Portland, I guess, was having its heyday. There were all kinds of tours. We had our Chamber of Commerce go to Portland and ooh and ah over the empty storefronts that were by the commuter rail system. And it was a very hard sell. We also had a political climate, much like everyone else faces. We had a progressive county executive and mayor who were cheering this thing on, and in fact were going to Washington and telling D.C. and the Federal Transit Administration that they had all of the approvals to move this thing forward. I'll get to that in just a minute. So our ragtag group of citizen activists, and serving on the county board, I was on the county board for 12 years. I'm a nurse by background. I really didn't, I knew, I got elected on the basis of trying to move a highway project. We have a belt line that goes like this, and there's a missing link in this, and so that was the reason people elected me, was because I said, yeah, we need to close this gap, because the roads out there just couldn't handle it. Well, I found out from a constituent who said, you know, you really should, if you don't know anything about transportation, you're dealing with this, you should go to the American Dream Coalition meeting. And so I got here, and it was like, you know, I was just blown away, because I didn't know how to look at a Transport 2020. I mean,
Which city was that one in, the first one you went to?
Oh, the first one was here in Washington, D.C. It was the very first meeting, and it was superb. I mean, I went away from there just completely blown away, and I was so incredibly appreciative and impressed with the availability of Tom Rubin and Wendell and Randall to help me, this absolute beginner, who needed Transport 101 to understand what was going on. So the ragtag team back in Madison, there was a fellow who was just a real geek, had the same kind of classes as Tom Rubin, if you know what I mean.
That's a good sign.
And he had a whole bunch of those pencil pocket protectors. You gotta love you guys, the bean counters of the world. I love you. He had been going to all of these meetings that the Transport 2020 group had been having for years. For years, they were waiting to pull this thing off. So he, along with Bill Richardson, some of the other county board supervisors, we started our campaign. So when I got back and I realized, oh my gosh, there's all this information, we put up our first website called The Great Train Robbery. And that was our repository of all the articles and comments, a place to post meetings and give people a chance to find out what was really going on. It also gave us a chance to start building a database of people that we could count on to show up at meetings. And they did. They came in great numbers, which was because people were they were just angry that they had been deceived by this Parsons-Brinckerhoff study, and they were being sold a bill of goods. It really riled people up. So we had the Great Train Robbery. That was our first thing. There were a number of things, since it was a very low-tech operation, we had to, anytime there was any opportunity for us to get some press, and I had a very good relationship with the press because I was one of the few conservatives on the county board, and whenever they needed a quote, they would give me a call. So, you know, I was always the opposition. So I was able to get the press because I had really cultivated a relationship with them. So one of the county board supervisors on the other side said, "Oh, those knuckle-dragging Neanderthals who think that commuter rail is bad." You know, they were calling us names. So we thought we'd have a little fun with it, and one of our buddies over at Talk Radio came up with this idea that we were cavemen, and that stood for Citizens Against Voting for Endless Madison Area Nonsense. And one of our favorite shock jocks on the radio, Vicki McKenna, it crowned me the queen of the cavemen. I was very proud of that. We had bumper stickers, T-shirts, and so we had a lot of fun with it, but it really helped to raise awareness. Simultaneous with all of this was a rail proposal in Milwaukee. It was called the KRM, Kenosha Racine Milwaukee, and it was to extend trains from Chicago through Milwaukee over to Madison, then up to Minneapolis. And Bob Poole and Tom Rubin were part of the team that showed the folly in all of that. And fortunately, right around the same time, Megabus was getting started. And so there were articles in the newspaper, and I sat on the MPO, and you know, they tell you you shouldn't gloat. I did gloat a little bit about the fact that we really didn't need a train system because we had Megabus. That was, I didn't realize they were in Chicago. I should back up just a little bit. You know, when I was thinking about what to talk about here, I decided I was going to rename my talk How We Defeated Commuter Rail. We had help from the American Dream Coalition. We had the arrogance of the smart people in Madison, and we had gifts from God. And those gifts were these kinds of things where we were called names and so on. There were a few more gifts. He was very generous. So all this is going on, and since I was on the county board, I introduced a resolution. And with that KRM thing, the only way that could move forward was to have enabling legislation from the state, which allowed regional transit authorities to be established that had the ability to raise a tax. So there would be a tax to support these various things. And so again, our shock jocks were very helpful to us, exposing all of this. Randall was on the radio, Wendell was on the radio, Tom was on the radio multiple times through this multi-year process, and they were very generous with that, another gift. So I dutifully, because my constituents did not want to see any more taxes, I introduced a resolution to have a referendum on the county ballot to see if people wanted to pay for a sales tax for commuter rail. And through the usual parliamentary shenanigans, they held my resolution in committee so that it couldn't go to the full county board, so it not in time for it to appear on the ballot. So it didn't. So what we had to do is we had to get real creative at that point. So we started our next initiative, which was no tax for tracks. And this is the one time I wish I had something, but I will show it to everyone in just a moment. Part of our ragtag group was a fellow by the name of Dave Blaska. Oh, you've got it. Oh, excellent. Okay. All right, so we decided, since we couldn't get it on the county ballot, that we were going to go to the individual municipalities. There are 62 municipalities in Dane County. Madison is the largest, of course, and the mayor didn't want any. He just flat out said, no, we are not putting it on. He wouldn't even allow it to go to committee. So I said, okay, if Madison doesn't want to do it. We got 45 of the 62 municipalities to put our little question on the ballot, which was, shall commuter rail from Middleton to the town of Burke be funded by up to a half cent increase in the sales tax? It was a very simple ballot question. We really tried to keep it very simple. With a lot of work going to all these municipalities, we got them to put it on the ballot. Then we had two more gifts that came. One was our county clerk said, we don't want to make our county clerks do, or those municipal clerks do all this extra work, and it's going to cost them at least $135 to put it on their ballots because they have to reprogram their voting machines. And I have to tell you, when I first heard that, I thought, oh no, now we're really sunk, because now the county clerks are against it. And then it was like, what do you mean the county clerks are defying the word, the voice of the people? So I called all my buddies over at the press, and they gave me a little ink on that. And then the next day or 2 days later, just to keep it in the news, the county executive said, oh, it's just irrelevant. We don't need to have this. We don't need to know what the voters think. So that gave us even more steam, and it truly was a gift, because we really worked it hard. So, okay, all right, okay. So So we're still doing all of this, and the state legislature passes the RTA law, where, you know, we tried so hard to stop it, but we just couldn't. So enabling legislation was given to all the municipalities, all the counties in the state to have an RTA.
That means RTA.
A regional transit authority, which has the taxing powers in most cases, which they were. It was unelected, unaccountable. They could essentially do whatever they wanted with the money that they got. So, huh? Pre-Scott Walker, right. This was under the Democrat Governor Doyle, and so, you know, we were all pretty glum about that, and so but it did make us work a little harder. So our good buddy Dave Blaska came up with this advertisement for us, and it's no tax for tracks, and there's, I think, you know, here she is, the poor little taxpayer. She's on the tracks, being tied because maybe she didn't pay her rent, but she didn't pay the tax. And all those mean robber barons, the elected officials were. This was incredibly effective, and I'll pass it around so that you can take a good look at it. We kept it as simple as we could. We did get a few people who, you know, made threatening phone calls to me, but that was all right. We also did a few other things. We simulated the rail crossings. There were something like 58 crossings on this isthmus, which would have been crazy for traffic. So that made it much easier for us. What was Peter's group called? Circus.
Citizen Initiated Rail Use Corridor.
Something like this. So and what we did was we had signs, and we walked across the street showing how long it would take for the trains to stop. Again, it was a very low budget operation. So I think the long and short of it was that when the vote came in for our No Tax for Tracks initiative and the referendum question, we had 44 of the 45 municipalities voted no. They didn't want it. And not only that, they voted to the tune of 75 to 80% vote saying no. It sent such a strong message to the powers that be that suddenly they didn't talk about commuter rail anymore. But they got a great idea now. Buses, which is what we were saying from the very beginning. So that's essentially our story. There's a lot more details. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, and it's, you know, never over till it's over.
Very, very